Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 9:30 p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta, and it is Monday night, and September the 27th. I'm just happy to be here, happy to bring you the information I want to talk about. I'm actually got a video playing in the background here. I want to continue talking tonight about a website that we've been looking at last Friday night, last Wednesday night, and whatnot for a few nights now. The Child Abuse Survivor Monument website, and that is you can find it a couple different ways. You can find it from www.irvingstudios.com, and also, or just typing into your browser, Child Abuse Survivor Monument. That'll bring it up as well. And this is some great information, and I'm happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us. It's a 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. I just barely got into my chat room here. Just barely made it on time. And glad to be here and able to continue to do these shows. It's just awesome. You know, I had no idea how long I'd be doing these shows. It's almost been a year, and November would be a year. And I only did a few shows last November, but so we're looking at almost a whole year. And I have like almost 11,300 shows listened to, and I just appreciate everybody who's tuning in. I really, your support is just awesome. And thank you so much for listening to me night after night. And I've got a lot of good friends who tune in and sit in the chat room and hang out with me pretty much night after night. So thank you so much, and day after day, right? I wanted to look at ritual abuse. That's the next section of this website. We're kind of going through the types of abuse. This website's a great website. It's Michael C. Irving. He's a psychotherapist. He's a sculptor, and he's a survivor of child abuse. And he created, along with a whole lot of other people and survivors, this Child Abuse Survivor Monument in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And it's been a few years now, but it's just amazing. I've never seen it in person. I've never been there to see it in person. I've seen the website. I've been on the website for over a year now, checking out the website. It's a great website. Everything you can think of on there, self-care, resources, talks about the monument, the Child Abuse Survivor Monument, the participants, how they went about creating this monument, and the work that went into it from all the survivors, who put their own words and handprints and poetry and music and everything into this monument, right? So it's a real tribute, and it's an honor to all the victims and survivors of child abuse that ever were and that ever will be, and I just love it. This website's just awesome. So the information here is great, and if you're a survivor of child abuse, there's all kinds of great links on here and also just great information about coping lists, because Michael C. Irving is a psychotherapist, and he created a whole bunch of different kinds of coping lists and different things for adult survivors of child abuse who, maybe having a little bit of a hard time coping, and there's just great ideas on there for what we can do if we need to ground ourselves or to do some breathing work and just all kinds of great stuff. So it's a great website, and I hope you will check it out. www.irvingstudios.com /child_abuse_survivor_monument/ritual abuse. That's where I wanted to continue on tonight. And on this page, there's an actual video that plays at the beginning, and that's what was playing when I first came on the show here just a few seconds ago. And this one lady's talking about her story, and they're talking about the monument. But I wanted to read this whole section on ritual abuse, and I'm just reading right from the page. You can go there too yourself, but you have to listen at your own discretion. All of the shows that I do are all about abuse, child abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault, you name it. I'm talking about it. So if you're sensitive to the topic of abuse of any type or violence and whatnot, you have to know what's good for you to listen to. And if you think the show might bother you, then you have to turn it off. You would not be hurting my feelings at all. Everyone needs to be in a safe place when they're listening to stuff like this, and especially survivors of child abuse. If you feel that you might not be strong enough to listen, or it just might bother you, and it could trigger you. And so you have to be very careful when you're listening to any of my shows, as well as any shows like this that are out there, right? Because I know I'm a survivor, and so you can be triggered, and you have to be in a safe enough place that you won't hurt yourself or someone else. If you become emotionally distraught from listening to this stuff, right? So you have to know what's good for you to listen to. I've been living with this my whole life, and I found 4 years ago that I wasn't going to kill myself, wasn't going to hurt anybody else, and so I'm perfectly safe to do this stuff. And I've been talking about abuse and living with abuse my whole life. So, in the aftermath of abuse. So I'm perfectly comfortable talking about it. I wasn't comfortable being abused, I'll tell you that. But I'm comfortable talking about it now because I want to be a voice. And that's mainly why I'm doing these shows, to be one more voice out here, along with all the other voices who are speaking out against abuse and standing up for children and standing up for adult survivors, and, you know, just passing on as much information as I can find that I find useful and helpful, and to raise awareness and prevention of child abuse, right? So that's why I'm doing these shows, and I just thank everybody for tuning in. If you're a young person under the age of 18, you have to have permission to listen to my shows, and the reason I say this is because I'm trying to protect children's lives, trying to save children's lives is what I'm doing, and that's what I'll do for the rest of my life as long as I'm on the planet. So I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows, because there's a lot of adult content on my shows that you may have not have heard a whole lot about abuse, and could be quite upsetting, or if you haven't heard it a whole lot about it, it is upsetting. And so, you know, you might not know who to go to for questions, or, you know, if you have questions about certain things that I'm talking about, it's good to have someone older, like an adult, like a parent or caregiver or teacher, counselor at school, someone you trust, you know, to listen to a show like this with you, so that they can help you to decide whether you should be listening to it. And because, you know, I don't have any idea how young the people are who are listening to my shows. And then if you have questions, they can help you find the answers, right? So that's what I ask. Please do that for yourself. You'll be doing yourself a favor and myself a favor. Keep yourself safe when you're online. It means everything. You really have to be very, very careful when you're online. And, you know, an adult should know what you're doing if you're under the age of 18. And I just say that because I care about children. And I was a child once, too, and I know how vulnerable and how completely exposed children are to these evil people out here. And so you have to be very, very careful, right? So ritual abuse, what is it? You know, this is what I'm very interested in this section here, because I haven't heard a whole lot about it, ritual abuse. I just hear about child abuse. And, you know, I haven't heard too many people talking about ritual abuse. And so I'd like to take a look at it. It says ritual abuse involves abusive, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, or sexual activity done in a repetitive pattern, often incorporating violence, ceremony, and or religious rites. And it says ritual abuse functions in an atmosphere of secrecy and complicity, and exists covertly in many social, economic, cultural, religious, and or ethnic communities. Ritual abuse can be hidden under the guise of acceptable social organizations, and individuals and groups practicing ritual abuse do so in secrecy. The abusers, well, actually almost all abuse is done in secrecy. The abusers certainly don't want to be caught, you know, so they like to do everything behind the closed doors so that nobody sees what they're doing. So abusers want to keep it silent so they can keep doing it. Survivors keep silent out of fear for their own lives, or fear for their families' lives, or just out of sheer shame and fear and guilt and whatnot, and just the whole horrors of not wanting to talk about it, which is completely understandable. And some people might say, well, how come you're talking about it? And it's like, because I've just decided not to be silent anymore. I was just not going to sit on the couch in silence anymore. And I didn't care what the consequences were, you know, whether I lost my remaining dysfunctional family members or not. I was talking about that on my Blog Talk show this morning, one child abuse survivor to another. You know, that it's not that I don't care about my family. I care about them very much, but the few members that are left. But, you know, not enough to stay silent, right? I care about me. You know, and I care about my mental health, and I care about my emotional health, my physical health, and it's about time I started caring about myself, whereas my parents did not care, and I was not taught how to care about myself, and I was actually taught to kill myself. So, you know, I thought, okay, I have to put myself here first here for my healing journey. These guys are all just going to have to go off on hold for now because I'm on my healing journey, and they're not with me. So, you know, they have the consequences of breaking the silence are huge. And, you know, so many times survivors will stay silent for their whole lives, right? There's many reasons why. It's very sad. It's a lonely place to be, and I know because I was there for a long, long time. Even though I would talk about it with other friends of mine who had been abused, and some people who were just sympathetic or empathetic. But, you know, I never really came out and broke the silence, like, you know, writing a public blog. I mean, I last October wrote a public-facing blog about my story, which then became my book, which is A Life of Death, The Redemption. But all the proceeds are going to Dreamcatchers for Abused Children because I didn't want the money for that book. You know, that would have been an insult. The money needs to go to help stop child abuse. So every book that's sold, all the profits are going to Dreamcatchers for Abused Children to help stop child abuse, right? And I just wanted to be one more voice out here with these other survivors because there's so many survivors out here who are talking and telling their stories and, saying, hey, we don't deserve to suffer. We never deserved any of that. And as survivors, we're going to raise our voice, and so that's what I wanted to do. But it's not necessarily what all survivors will do. So as many times people stay silent. That's the whole issue with abuse. It's because it's silenced, and that's why abusers want to keep it silent so they can keep doing what they're doing. So that's why it's always hidden. It's always secret, right? Individuals and groups practicing ritual abuse do so in secrecy. And it says the abusers are primarily motivated by power, status, and personal or spiritual gratification. The degrees of cruelty and bizarreness of these activities make reports of ritual abuse difficult to comprehend and accept. So a safe environment can be created within our communities by informing and educating the public and criminal justice system. It says survivors need to be provided with therapeutic and social support as well as civil and criminal amnesty when reporting ritual abuse. And it says ritual abuse is any physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, or sexual activity done in a repetitive pattern, often involving violence, ceremony, and or religious rites. So discussion, ritual abuse, how and why. And says, why is it so hard to believe that ritual abuse happens? This is not new. Its techniques are well known and used in other areas. For example, during World War I and II, people need to stretch their level of awareness. Perpetrators are motivated by power, money, and status. Ritual abuse involves violence, pain, and control. It is covert and sometimes profit-making. It is sometimes hierarchical. That's a hard word to pronounce. It involves manipulation, and all abuse really involves manipulation. It is reality distorting, morality destroying, and is generational, extending over a lifetime. And that's abuse for you. Ritual abuse is any abuse carried out in a ritualistic way. It can be repetitive and involve mind control, programming, and multiple perpetrators. It is not necessarily religious. So it says the pattern of abuse sets up fear and can trigger reactions in survivors. Some rituals are satanic in nature. Public disbelief and denial exist. This type of abuse is subversive and destructive. It is secretive and silent, and people do not believe it could happen to them. And they need something to relate to in order to understand the issue. There is inequity in the way society views these issues. And that's the way it is with abuse, period. There's some society really, as a whole, just wants to just pretend that abuse and child abuse does not exist. They're actually more willing to accept domestic violence and sexual assault as something that's actually happening out there because those are adults. But when it comes to children, society doesn't have relationships with children. Parents have relationships with children, but society as a whole does not. We think on adult levels, we think on adult terms, and because we're adults. The main adult society runs the main media. The main media is what dictates what we see and what we think and how we feel. And so, if no one's speaking out against abuse, then society thinks it's not happening. Oh, there's no such thing. I've actually had people, say, well, this is how it's not that big of a deal. There's not that many kids being abused. And it's like, well, where are you getting your information from? Because I'm getting a whole different group of information from professionals and from people who have done the studies, right? And they're saying that it is an epidemic and it is a problem. And, as a survivor, I know just what a problem it is. And a lot of my friends were abused as well. And so, we know what a problem it is, all of us survivors out here, and that's why I really wanted to be one more survivor standing up and breaking the silence, because I thought, what? No way am I going to stay silent to keep society happy, just so people don't have to know about my horrible childhood. I don't care. I'm coming out, I'm speaking out, and I'm doing it for the main purpose of stopping child abuse, right? I don't care what people think. It makes no difference to me. Nobody really, nobody cared that I was being abused, so why would I care what they think, right? Makes no difference. I got a job to do, and that's to help stop child abuse, right? And so that's what I will do for the rest of my life. And so, but in doing so, I had to come out and go public with my story because I wanted to get involved with public speaking and public advocacy. And I thought, well, somebody's going to eventually ask me the question, have you ever experienced child abuse? And what am I going to say? No. Out of sheer, embarrassment or whatever in front of a camera or in front of 500 people. And I thought, no. Truth is truth. Truth hurts, and truth will sometimes, rip a family to shreds, but our family was dysfunctional from before I was born, so it's not like there's anything different now. You know what I mean? So this is the whole issue. I thought, no, just to remain silent is the worst thing I could have done. I'm so glad that I actually spoke up and spoke out. And so, but this is the thing. Society would love to see it hushed up. They don't want to have to deal with it. They don't want to have to think about it. $104 billion in 2007, $104 billion were spent because of child abuse in the United States alone. And so you think, how many more billions since 2007, right? Billions of dollars every year being spent because of child abuse. Not to prevent child abuse, just because of it. So, we need $1 trillion to stop child abuse. Then we can just move on, right? This is ridiculous that kids are being abused so horrifically. And I mean, I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and we're steady looking at the headlines out here, and we know what's happening, and we know what's happening to these poor kids and these babies, and it's just absolutely horrific. And I don't know how people can sleep at night without even caring about these little ones. I know a lot of people think, well, it's not my problem, they're not my kids, and why should I have to worry about that? Well, you don't have to, make it your life's mission to worry about it, but what you could do is just do all you can to help out. And look, the main thing is to get to become educated and aware of the signs and symptoms of abuse, and make sure that the children in your own life are not being abused, right? So all the kids in your own world, that's what we would like everybody to do, because we could pretty much stop 90 to 95% of child abuse if we could get everybody to do that. But people don't want to break up the happy family, right? I talk a lot about that, but that's because so many times blood runs thicker than justice and getting kids some help, right? Quite often it's like, well, if we tell, then Grandpa, he'll have to go to jail, or, well, if we tell, then Aunt Martha, she won't be able to make us those lovely pies anymore because she'll be doing time down at the county pen or the state pen. And it's just sad, because who suffers? The children do. Not the abuser. The abuser is abused because they want to abuse. They're doing it because it's a choice. But these children, it's not a choice for them. If it was, and you could ask a child and say, would you like to be abused and burnt and sexually abused and raped, or would you rather go out and play and have fun? What do you think they would choose? It's like, or would you like your mom or dad to come and beat you up tonight and leave you with broken ribs and a busted leg? Or would you like an ice cream? I mean, come on, let's face it. These kids don't want to have to deal with this tonight, and they certainly don't want to have to deal with it tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. They're being forced to endure abuse by people who could do something about it but won't. And this is the sad thing. It's all preventable. Abuse is 100% preventable, because abuse is a choice. And so it's very, very sad that people would choose to abuse their children. Absolutely makes me sick, but that's what we're trying to do, is just get the education out here to people and get people thinking about this. This is very serious. It says, ritual abuse is justified in the minds of its perpetrators. They possess a subversive morality, a twisted spirituality, or motivation, and have a need to belong. Ritual abuse is about survival for the survivor, but for the perpetrators, it's about power and status. So it says where? Ritual abuse exists everywhere, usually evil masking as normality. It could occur in churches, public buildings, cemeteries, the woods, morgues, and other similar locations. And it says who? Everyone is capable of ritual abuse. Doctors, lawyers, politicians, priests, so you name it. A lot of times these headlines come out, and we find and we see who the perpetrators are, and they're doctors, they're school teachers, they're principals, coaches, people who work with children, and people who have pretty high social standing, right? They look like real nice guys on their pictures. They've molested or raped, hundreds of children, and taken pornographic pictures of them, and or abused their own children horrifically and kept them in the cellar. This is just it. They look great, and they're probably really nice to their friends and colleagues at work. But then when they go home, the evil, it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde or whatever. The evil one comes out, and then the real self comes out, and then they abuse their children or their other children, right? So it's absolutely horrible, because in the day they're masquerading as these lovely people that everybody just looks up to, these doctors and lawyers and teachers and coaches and different mentors and different things like that, people who work with children. And not every person who works with a child is an evil, twisted, abuser. That's a fact. But it's just that it's just known, and it is very common that many people who do work with children do abuse children. And all you have to do is start looking around. The facts are facts, right? So it's pretty sad, and that's why it's important for parents to know what to look for the signs and symptoms of child sexual abuse. You want to know. I know if I had a child, I would want to be on top of this stuff, because you don't want your kids living in fear. So you can't be like, you can't bring up your children to live in this box, this isolated box of fear. That's abuse in itself, right? But education, that's where it's at. Learning the signs and symptoms and talking with your children at the appropriate age levels about what good touch, bad touch is, appropriate age levels. You got to get the information and get the facts, and then do the right thing by your kids. When your teens are going out, running around to go to the movies and whatnot, you just make sure that you've already kind of had the talk with them, like to not get into cars with people they don't know. And if they say, "Oh, Mom, we're not going to do that," just say, "I know, I'm telling you because I love you and I want to see you come home tonight." And here's the cell phone, and you phone me if you need anything. And not, you don't tell your kids, if you're not back by 10 o'clock, we're locking the door and we don't care if you come home, because your kids will stay out and you don't know where they're at. And they'll just figure, hey, they don't want me at home anyway, so I'm gone. This is not the way to parent, right? You want your children to, first of all, if you have children, you should love them, right? And second of all, if you have children, you should look after them. And third of all, if you have children, you should teach them and teach them properly and teach them out of love and not out of power and control. I'm the parent, it's like, so. But, instead of, saying, look, I love you, son, I love you, daughter, and I want to see you come home tonight in one piece. So do not drink and drive. Take a cab. Call me if you need a ride, whatever. But get home to me safe. That says so much to a child. To a teenager. And hey, teenagers are still children. Under the age of 18, still legally a child. So, you want to bring up your children with respect, and they will respect you. And if you treat them with respect first, they will most likely treat you with respect, because they will know that you do love them and that you do care about them. Even though they might still go do really stupid things, they tend to carry that with them while they're doing the stupid things, and then half the time they don't do it again, or they really think about it the next time, and they say, man, my mom or my dad was right, they love me and they don't want to see me get hurt. See, but when you scream and yell and berate at your children and beat on them, half the time, they're not going to listen to you, and if they'll just leave, or they just won't pay attention to what you're saying, and then they'll be abusers too and beat on their children, right? So this is the whole issue, right? There's ways to handle this situation and make sure that your kids are safe. We could stop a lot of child abuse. 90 to 95% of child abuse occurs in the home, and it's generally someone the child knows. So whether it's the parents, it's almost always the parents, believe it or not. Grandparents, relatives, distant relatives, cousins, brothers, siblings, sisters. It's generally a family member who abuses a child. It's 90 to 95% of abuse happens within the home. The other 5 to 10% is a child sexual predator, or somebody like a stranger who gets a hold of your child at Walmart and rapes them in the bathroom, this type of thing. So you definitely want to be aware that most child abuse happens in the home, and if you know that, then you know that 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused under the age of 18. That is a fact, all the way across the board, on every single website you can possibly find. That's the facts, that's the stats, and that's what it is, except for it's underreported, so it's probably a little bit higher than that. 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused under the age of 18. So that's whether it's unwanted sexual touching, exploitation, molestation, rape, you name it, right? It's happening in the homes. 90 to 95% of abuse occurs in the home. So if you are aware of the signs and symptoms of, let's say, child sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, neglect, and spiritual abuse, you could protect your children. And if you don't have children, but you know a whole lot of children, let's say your family is you have lots and lots of relatives who have children, keep an eye on them. because you just don't know. Abusers are not these typical what people would think abusers might look like these crazy ma and pa kettle types with shotguns walking around with whips in their hands going, we're going to whip you. No, that's not what an abuser looks like. They look like everybody else out here on the street. They look like your neighbors. They look like your family. Take a good look at your family. That's what abusers look like. So abusers don't have a picture that just says, oh, there's a typical abuser, right? They're the people that you work with in your office, right? How many of them will abuse their children? Quite a few. If 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys are abused sexually under the age of 18 by a family member, pretty much 90 to 95%, then you know that the abusers that you work with, people that you hang out with after work, they're not going to tell you that they sexually use their children, and they're certainly not going to tell you that they beat on their children or that they abuse them, right? They don't want to be thought of as a monster. They want to be thought of as this cool person, a person with control and power. They're great, right? But in the meantime, their family's suffering. And their children are suffering, right? So abusers, there's no just typical picture of an abuser. And they come in all ages and all sizes, right? I mean, it's not just young people who abuse their children. Many times it's older people, and that's my case. My mom was in her 50s when most of my physical abuse occurred, and she was almost 280 pounds, and she was 5'11", and she was a big honking monstrous woman, and I was born underweight, like 2.5 pounds, so I was a very small child. And so when you were getting a beating from her, you were seriously going to feel it. And so, she wasn't playing around. She was trying to hurt me, and she did a great job. So the whole issue is that abusers are not always who they seem to be. And so if you know the signs and symptoms of abuse, you can protect your own children, and you can protect the children in your own life within your own homes to make sure that they're not being abused. We could stop 90 to 95% of child abuse if everybody would do that. But we have to get the word out. We have to all start talking about this, and we all have to be very serious about it. And it's just stuff that people don't want to talk about on their lunch breaks. I mean, this is a fact for people like me, because I only have so many years left, right? I mean, I got however many years that the Lord God would give me, So however many years that is, I got to keep talking, and I got to keep getting the word out. And so, but if we can get everybody's voices in here on this, everyone talking about this and getting the awareness out, the education out, signs and symptoms, how to report it, how parents can get help so that they don't abuse their children. There is help out there for parents, and there's help out there. There's coping mechanisms. There's ways to learn how to cope without hurting your children, guaranteed. Abuse is a choice. You don't have to abuse. So, people need help. That's all there is to it. And a lot of parents need help, and they're just not getting it, so the children pay the price. And so this is the whole issue. It's horrible what's going on. And we really need, everyone's voice, right? So that's why I keep saying that. It's very, very important. So that's pretty much what they had to say there about ritualistic abuse, and it's going on. And believe it or not, it's happening. And we don't hear a whole lot about the actual word ritual abuse, right? Almost just kind of gets thrown into the category of regular child abuse, you know what I mean? Whether it's physical, verbal, emotional, psychological, spiritual, right? That type of thing, neglect or whatnot. But ritual abuse, it's a little bit different, and it is happening, and it does happen to children, and it's absolutely horrible. And, you wouldn't wish that on anybody. And we just have to keep raising awareness and getting this information out here. So I hope that you will check out Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers. I'll be on there tomorrow night with possibly Elizabeth Brawley. I think she's going to be popping in. We're going to cover headlines tomorrow night, and then Wednesday night's my show, Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, as well as my shows here on my own show. So you can check out my show page and see. I'll be back on tomorrow morning, one child abuse survivor to another, 6 a.m. And have a great night, everybody. Just take care of yourselves. If I can find any information for you or whatnot, just get a hold of me on Blog Talk Radio or Facebook. And, if I can get you any references or links, the information that I've been talking about, let me know. And have a great night, everybody. Take care of yourselves. If you're a survivor, make sure you just reach out, call somebody, call a crisis line. If you're a child and you're being abused, you call the kids' help phone, you call the police, you call somebody, and you get yourself some help. And if you're a domestic violence, you're in a situation of domestic violence, whether you're a woman or a man, you get yourself some help and make a phone call and save your life and save your children's lives, right? And there's people out there waiting for you to phone. people like you and me, survivors, right, who are manning those telephone lines, waiting for people to phone. So if you're having a hard time and you can't cope and you think, I don't want to hurt my child, but I don't know what else to do, make a phone call. Get some help, right? You won't regret it. Your family will be so happy about it. You know what I mean? And you would be happy about it because you'll be getting some help, right? It's so important. I know it's so hard. It's got to be so incredibly hard for parents out there. And so, make sure you reach out and make the phone call. Get some help, right, before you lash out and hurt your children. And, if you're a survivor, get some help. Don't suffer in silence, right? So take care, everybody, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Have a great night.